Spanish authorities continue efforts to clear sewer systems following severe floods in the Valencia region. Giselle Pellico gave her closing statement on Tuesday in one of France's biggest rape trials in recent history.
Welcome the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, joining us live.
A long ovation for a visibly touched Volodymyr Zelensky.
Thank you so much.
This is how the European Parliament commemorated 1,000 days of war in Ukraine. And in his speech, Zelensky targeted the enemy once again.
You know very well that Putin does not value people or rules. He values only money and power. These are the things we must take away from him to restore peace.
The President of the European Parliament, Roberto Metsola, has insisted on her support for Ukraine before elect President of the United States, Donald Trump, swears into office, after which everything can change.
Today, we send a clear, simple message. We stand with Ukraine until freedom, until real peace.
EU buildings in Brussels had projections of the Ukrainian flag as a symbol of solidarity on Monday. Zelensky has called on the EU to push harder before conditions for his country worsen.
Giselle Pellico, who was subjected to mass rape by her husband and dozens of other men for over a decade, said that macho patriarchal society should change its attitude on rape. She gave her closing statement to court on Tuesday in one of France's biggest criminal trials in recent history. Pellico called it a trial of cowardice, referring to the men who claimed they didn't realize it was rape. The abuse was discovered in 2020 after police stumbled upon videos and pictures her husband had recorded of it. The trial could have been held behind closed doors, but Pellico requested for it to be held in public, saying she hoped it would help other women speak up. The case shocked the country and triggered nationwide protests in her support. A verdict is expected to be delivered by the end of December. Clean-up efforts continue following severe flooding in Spain's Valencia region, with sewer blockages now the main concern for authorities. Workers have been attempting to free up the sewers for about a week, injecting water to soften the mud and absorb it through another pipe. So far, 60% of Pipewater's 75-kilometre sewage system has been cleared, but the sewers are still not being drained.
Tenemos un problema grande de atasco del alcantarillado en Paiporta. Están trabajando más de 25 máquinas en intentar resolver el problema. Por eso no podemos sacar ahora mismo, echar agua ni residuos a las alcantarillas porque empeoraríamos el problema.
There are also garages that are still full of mud, which can cause leaks in the drinking water network. However, Spain's public health says few infections have been detected, and those that have been are only minor.
The citizens of Georgia took to the streets on Tuesday morning demanding fresh parliamentary elections after what they call was a rigged election with Russia's assistance. The governing Georgian Dream Party was established by billionaire Bidzina Ivanishvili, who made his fortune in Russia and only narrowly won the vote back in October. In Tbilisi, police broke up demonstrations. Several people were arrested. Ivanishvili's party has recently pushed through laws similar to those used by the Kremlin to crack down on freedom of speech and LGBTQ+ rights. The EU suspended Georgia's membership application process indefinitely in June after the country's parliament passed a law requiring organizations that receive more than 20% of their funding from abroad to register as, quote, pursuing the interest of a foreign power.
Slovakian and Hungarian politicians strongly condemned the decision by US President Joe Biden to allow Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia with American-supplied longer-range missiles. Slovakia's populist Prime Minister Robert Fico said the decision was made with the clear aim to completely thwart or delay peace talks.
Ide o bezprecedentnú eskaláciu napätia. Ide o rozhodnutie, ktoré marí nádeje na začatie akýchkoľvek mierových rokovaní a ukončenie vzájomného zabíjania Slovanov na Ukrajine.
Hungary's foreign minister also lashed out against the decision, saying the move could serve to escalate the war and threaten the outbreak of a global conflict.
Elképesztően veszélyes ötlet, amely a háború továbbterjedésének rendkívül súlyos veszélyével jár. Aztán itt van az ukránok követelése és egyes NATO tagországok megengedő véleménye Ukrajna NATO meghívásával kapcsolatban, amely pedig teljesen egyértelműen a harmadik világháború reális veszélyét hozná szintén nagyon közel.
The shift in policy added an uncertain new factor to Russia's full-on invasion of Ukraine, with the Kremlin warning the decision adds fuel to the fire of the war and would escalate international tensions even further.
Coalition negotiations have officially begun in Austria following several rounds of exploratory talks. 7 weeks after the national elections, a preliminary decision on Austria's future government was made on Monday. The far-right Freedom Party won the national elections in September. However, Austria's federal president gave the mandate to form a government to the runner-up, Karl Nehammer of the Austrian People's Party, as no party was willing to work together with the FPÖ and its party head Herbert Kickl.
Ich darf Sie heute informieren, dass wir die Sondierungsphase abgeschlossen haben und formell Regierungsverhandlungen mit SPÖ und NEOS aufnehmen. Gleichzeitig möchte ich klarstellen, dass wir noch nicht am Ziel jetzt einer Koalition oder eines gemeinsamen Regierungsprogrammes angekommen sind. Wir gehen jetzt in tiefe Regierungsverhandlungen, die ganz viele Detailbereiche berührt. Der Ausgang dieser Verhandlungen ist nach wie vor weiterhin offen.
Nehammer's coalition with the Social Democrats and Liberals excludes the FPÖ. A three-party alliance, as is being proposed, would be a first in Austria.
EU buildings across Brussels have been lit up in the colours of the Ukrainian flag to mark the 1,000th day since Russia invaded in 2022. As of August this year, almost 12,000 civilians were reported as killed in Ukraine, according to UN figures. UNICEF says that figure includes 2,406 children. In Kyiv, a memorial to those lost continues to grow, with national flags placed to honour each soldier killed while fighting Russia.
Speaking at the end of the first day of the G20 summit in Brazil, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer promised the UK would double down on its support for Kyiv as Ukraine marks 1,000 days of Russia's full-scale invasion.
That's 1,000 days of aggression from Russia and 1,000 days of sacrifice from Ukraine. We need to double down. We need to make sure Ukraine has what is necessary for as long as necessary, because we cannot allow Putin to win this war.
President Emmanuel Macron mirrored Starmer's sentiment and said it is France's duty to help Ukraine protect its territory. He added that the change in the conflict triggered by the involvement of North Korean troops should not be underestimated.
Ça va? Bonsoir. La seule puissance qui fait une escalade dans ce conflit aujourd'hui, c'est la Russie, en engageant à ses côtés la Corée du Nord, qui est, on le sait, une puissance très agressive, qui est engagée sur un programme nucléaire avec des missiles de très longue portée. Et donc c'est véritablement une rupture dans cette guerre qui a conduit à ce choix des Américains.
Leaders of the world's 20 major economies also issued a joint declaration in which they called for a global pact to combat hunger, more aid for Gaza, and to end the hostilities in the Middle East.
Israeli airstrikes targeted a neighborhood in the heart of Beirut late Monday evening. Lebanon's health ministry said at least 5 people were killed and 31 wounded. The strikes targeted government and diplomatic buildings, said Lebanon's state-run national news agency, but others aren't so sure.
لحونا على بيروت عم يضربوا المهجرين ما عم بيخلوا حدا والله يحمي حزب الله.
To these images, US envoy Amos Hochstein arrived to the war-torn city this Tuesday. His aim? to finally find a diplomatic solution to the conflict.
I came back because we have a real opportunity to bring this conflict to an end. This is a moment of decision-making. I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
Meanwhile, the Israeli military has released a video in which it claimed to show Israeli soldiers conducting operations in southern Lebanon. The army said its troops found a weapons depot, including ammunition, firearms, and explosives. The so-called president of Abkhazia, Alsan Bazanya, has resigned following widespread protests against an investment deal which opponents claim would increase Russian influence in the region. Demonstrators stormed government buildings last Friday, forcing Bazanya to flee and plunging the self-declared republic into political turmoil. The president has said he will withdraw his resignation if protesters do not leave the buildings in the capital Sukhumi by Tuesday. The unrest was sparked by opposition to a property agreement between Abkhazia and Russia, which would allow Russian companies to invest in the region. Opponents of the agreement argue that it will inflate property prices and increase Moscow's influence.